absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us. How's things? How's business?
Yes. Seen a sharp increase lately. What's nice is we actually have just been rebooking people for 2 years.
Yeah.
Our back office system now has a default setting for rebook COVID, and every time you every time you ran a report, it would just be rebook, new booking, rebook. And now we're seeing we're still getting people postponing. I think the very nature of our holidays and the complexity of them is not something that people my own theory is that people who are desperate to get away are sort of just wanting to fly and flop. I think the adventure market will be a little bit slower because if you think a lot of our holidays are multi-centre. So you're in a scenario where you've got 3, 4, 5 different countries.
Yeah.
I've just done one today where there's a guy, he needs his vaccine and PCR to get into Zambia. Then he's all right going into Botswana, but then he needs one for entry into South Africa. And then he's flying to Mozambique the next day and he needs another one and then another one to transit back through South Africa. And I think short term, people are thinking that's not a relaxing holiday.
Yeah.
And a lot of, personal outlay on the tests as well, because, especially when you're in a remote area on safari, the cost can be quite prohibitive.
Yeah.
Especially places like Botswana where it's all flying safaris. So ultimately, the test's got to be flown back to Maun, processed there, and then emailed back to camp.
Yeah, I didn't think
so
about that.
You're actually paying for a nurse to fly into your camp. Places like the Kruger, where a lot of the private game reserves are down the western side of the reserve, they're near sort of towns. So there it's more affordable, but it's still an inconvenience. Whereas if you just go to South Africa, you only need the one test to get in. You don't need one to come home. You just go to Kenya. So that's the trend we're seeing at the moment. People are trying to stay in one country. And the people who are booking the more adventurous and intricate itineraries are tending to book much further in advance, which is the norm with our more intricate bookings, to be honest.
That was one of my questions. I was going to ask you, actually. Are you finding that, as you've just said, rightly so, there's a fair amount of restrictions potentially on, not necessarily restrictions, but obviously moving from one country to another at the moment, there's a lot of testing. But are you finding that people are booking early for 2023, not only because then obviously hopefully everything will be more relaxed, but also as well on top of that, trying to book early, actually you get better availability by booking that far in advance?
Yeah, what we've noticed is, particularly the airfares, the airlines aren't loading the lower fare classes, particularly at peak season, and I think they're just trying to recoup some of their losses, which is a bit unfair. You're penalising people when it's not their fault.
Yeah.
If you follow me.
Yeah.
Especially around Christmas, New Year. I'm doing a honeymoon for my own goddaughter, and I said to her, "Look, you really want to go at Christmas because you'll save yourself a third."
Yeah.
The problem we do have is with availability, because obviously on safari, lots of these camps only sleep 12, 16, 20 people. And when bookings have been rolling over for 2 years, you're not actually getting your 2022, 23 bookings. These are people who were booked back in 20 and 21.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But fortunately for us, most of our more complex itineraries do book well in advance.
Right. Okay. That's good. That's good to know. And in terms of the bookings for probably more so in advance, into 2023, what's looking popular at the moment in terms of destinations?
South Africa is always popular.
Yeah.
South Africa and Mauritius is always popular. South Africa, Mozambique, Kenya, coupled with Tanzania, and Tanzania with Zanzibar, is always popular and really popular. And I don't know if you recall, but earlier in proceedings, Kenya managed to stay off the red list.
Yeah.
and so that became really popular then. People were doing more Kenya and Kenya coast, whereas previously it was more Kenya, Zanzibar, Pemba, Mafia.
Right.
Or, yeah, those are the three hotspots.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so in terms of, obviously, as you said, there's a fair amount of restrictions still, you know, for sort of last minute bookings. But if clients are interested in getting across to places like South Africa or elsewhere, can it still be done?
Yeah, easily. In fact, we just booked some of your clients today.
You have, yeah.
Yeah. You know, this is more the trend. That would be more the last minute booking I expect to see.
Right. Something.
You know, they're not really going. Well, they're just going to Cape Town, the Winelands. They're not going too far afield. People doing the garden route, because as I say, they've not got to worry about malarial precautions if they're sticking down a garden route game reserve. You can self-drive. You can sort of stay in small guest houses where they're not exposed to a lot of people. So, yeah, that sort of itinerary we're getting last minute.
Brilliant. No, that's really good. I think it must be quite refreshing, actually, as you said, to not be doing as many cancels and rebooks now and actually getting some new business through the door. It certainly is nice for us. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, definitely. We're still getting people who have not been vaccinated, but they can still get into most destinations as long as they've got a PCR test within, well, it ranges from 48 to 72 hours. A few countries are doing these passenger location forms now. So, yeah, I think it's still putting some people off, but I think on the whole, people are just desperate to get away.
Yeah. And what about deals? You know, whether it's last minute deals or whether it's, you know, better to book in advance and actually take advantage of some deals for next year. Are there deals around to be had for your product?
I think in a lot of the hotels, lodges, operators, I think they're boxing clever. They're not going too far in advance with the deals. They try to entice people in early.
Yeah.
You know, because they just want to fill beds. Obviously, they've been empty for 2 years. So what they're doing is extending deals. You know, now we've got quite a few up to the end of July.
Yep.
I would imagine by mid next month they'll review their occupancies and sort of say, right, we'll extend that to the end of August.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are finding there are plenty of deals about, but they're not committing too far in advance.
Okay, right. So I mean, because it's the old adage of, you know, pre-COVID, we'd always say to people, there's better deals if you book further in advance. You know, for example, like we would say to people, if you could book for later in the year or early into 2023, there'd always be deals. But I guess, as you've said, you know, properties, hotels, etc., airlines, they just want to recoup some of the losses from the last couple of years. So I guess they're not, you know, being too, not generous, but they're not being too forthcoming with deals, in which case.
Yes, I think there is definitely that. I think they're just basically they're trying to assess the situation, and they're not committing to things too far in advance in case suddenly, you know, the world and his wife suddenly want to go to South Africa and they didn't need to be giving out deals.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I do think that they're doing this staggered deal. But as you know, the gentleman said earlier, you know, everyone now is not just thinking about COVID, they're looking at this whole Russian-Ukraine situation.
Of course, yeah.
You know, is airspace going to become restricted? You know, who's going to get involved and to what extent? So it just seems to be one thing after another for the travel industry at the moment.
One thing after another, isn't it? I'm conscious of time. So just one last quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, I've said, you know, I've asked kind of what's popular, but you know, everyone now has had a couple of years of not traveling. Perhaps they've got a bit of a pot of money to spend, maybe a little bit more than they normally would on a bucket list holiday almost. What would be your recommendation for a next bucket list holiday for people that are interested in going to Africa?
Obviously, seasonally it varies a lot all over Africa because it's so, you know, we go from the equator down to the Arctic. South Africa is always a firm favourite. If you've never been on safari before and you're a bit, you know, dubious about being stuck in a vehicle for, you know, 2 weeks and you might not like it, then you can do a short safari. Then you've got, there's just so much diversity in South Africa. For a first-time visitor to Africa, would always be my recommendation. 2, 3 nights, 4 nights on safari, garden route, winelands, battlefields, you know, mountains, hiking. There's just so much to do. Indian Ocean, beaches.
Yeah. Anyway, the answer, anywhere that people want to travel, we'll take it.
Yeah. I think people tend to do if it's the first time on safari again, they'd go to Kenya, maybe 4 nights to Masai Mara and then beach. And then that's when they get hooked. And next time they go back, it's longer on safari and a bit less on the beach. And we do have a lot of repeat clients. You know, we've got one family who have accumulated 5 holidays over the last 2 years with us.
Oh, wow.
Because they just
some going in the last 2 years, isn't it? The last couple of years.
Well, they always go twice a year, but they've not been for 2 years.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So between now and 2024, they've got 5 holidays with us.
Brilliant. That's incredible.
Yeah,
no, absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. Thank you for that.